Hi, I'm Max Keiser. This is the Keiser Report. I've just heard a new phrase, global stilling. What is that? I don't know. Let's ask Stacy.
Well, Max, remember we just retired the word transitory. According to Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank, he said we need to retire that word. Well, global stilling is kind of a retirement of the climate cycles. So I've just heard of this word for the first time, as you mentioned. I did Google it, and I do see a lot of references going back over the past few years. So it's not something actually new, it's just something new in the headlines. And that is the global stilling is essentially that in the past few decades, there have been 15% less winds, power, and energy in the wind, right? That is partly due to, as we keep on seeing, right, the Arctic area is getting warmer and warmer. So there's less of a discrepancy between the Arctic temperatures and the equator. Like it's not driving as much wind as it used to. We saw this. This is why not only has the money printing caused the price of natural gas and oil to rise, but we also saw over the past year, what has happened is that the wind energy was reduced throughout Europe. And therefore, they have huge systems in the North Sea, across Europe, to provide wind energy. However, the wind energy did not arrive this past year. And that is called global stilling. The headline on this reads, "Where has the wind gone? Global stilling is blamed as wind speeds drop across Europe, cutting green energy production, threatening to drive up energy prices even further." For me, this is a great metaphor for essentially the financial system. We always talk about this fractal nature of our culture, society, the economy, nature, everything around us is a fractal of each other. And we have a kind of global stilling in the money supply. There's no velocity of money. They could print all they want, but there's no movement. There's no energy behind the economy, and thus the money just sits there like this. It doesn't move. The same thing with the wind energy. It's not there, and we've set up these elaborate systems to capture the wind energy, and it's almost like a quantum sort of nature of it, that it sees us building the systems and it decides, well, we're not going to blow.
Right. The money velocity, we know, is trending towards zero. We've been reporting in that for years. No matter how much money they print, it's not being loaned out. It's not causing velocity or wind in the economy. And that's why the economy is stagnating. And people are saying, hey, we're heading into stagnation. But look, the dynamism of the ecosystem of planet Earth predictably is dying because there's too much pollution. Whether it's landfill pollution, pollution in the rivers, pollution in the oceans, pollution in the air, chemical pollution, permanent chemical pollution, all the biosystems are dying. So humans effectively are committing mass suicide. Our species is becoming extinct. The good news is that Bitcoin brings back the dynamism. That's why we should applaud the volatility in Bitcoin. When it's all trading wildly between 20,000 to 3,000 to 60,000 to 30,000, that's life. That's the way. That's what we need to breathe the wind of dynamism back into the human experience on planet Earth. That's what it's telling us. That's the hope. If we don't adopt a global Bitcoin standard and we keep the fiat standard, then we are guaranteed to euthanize our species on this planet. Nobody else in the metaverse would care at this point that we've overstayed our welcome with all of our garbage and obesity. So it won't be a big loss, but that's the trend.
So again, back to the story of the global stilling and comparing it to the global economy is that we have a situation where if you imagine a sailboat in the middle of the ocean trying to get from one point to the other, if there's no wind in their sails, they just sit there unless they want to get out and start rowing, right? So we're at that point in our economy that we have to either start rowing, and that is perhaps moving to a plan B, moving to Bitcoin, moving to an alternative system, because at the moment, the architects of the current system are stuck on stupid. They're stuck there and they don't want to figure a way out of this. There's no wind in the sails. The velocity of money, the pile of money is huge. We have massive M1, M2, any way you count, and they keep on trying to change it. But nevertheless, every single way you possibly count the money supply. There's an enormous pile of it. It's sitting with 2 or 3 or 4 guys or 4 banks and a few, oligarchs. It's sitting there. It's not moving. There's no energy into the system. It's not circulating in the system. The money is supposed to be the lubricant for the energy, the dynamism of the system. They've decided to just give up.
It reminds me of during the Black Plague years in Europe.
You remember those?
Well, I was reading about this, and the churches would simply throw the corpses into the basement of the church.
Yeah.
And they would pile up 10, 15 corpses high. And the parishioners upstairs would really complain about the smell. And they were wondering, and we're getting sick from all this smell. Why is that? They didn't understand that having rotting corpses in the basement, hundreds of them, would make you ill. So the central bankers don't understand that by printing rotted, pus-infested, fiat money, Black Plague enabled garbage and injecting it into the ecosystem in the hundreds of trillions of dollars would be like injecting cyanide into somebody at the hospital. It's not going to be a good outcome. They don't get it. They are, kind of like they're serial killers.
Well, whatever you want to call them, you can call them serial killers, psychopaths, sociopaths, murderers, elites, kings, monarchs, oligarchs, whatever you want to call them. They have no wind in their sails. And you, the passengers, the bottom 99.9% deplorable passengers, you could either sit on there and wait for your elites and oligarchs to figure out what to do, or you can get off. You can find a different way around this because, they obviously haven't invested in the system. They just keep doubling down on this system that's failed. Even the U.S. banking system still runs on COBOL, which it's a 60-year-old software program, right? But with this energy grid, and it's interesting because the energy underlies everything. As you mentioned, the economy can't move forward without energy, without the oil production, without energy production. We can't have anything, right? So they're trying to reduce the energy, perhaps maybe to make their economy look better. But they've built these systems, these renewable energy grid. They've invested a lot. And now all the things they thought were what it was going to be, like the past, doesn't necessarily equal what the future returns will be. The winds are not there. So just look at some of the data of what happened in the United Kingdom, especially this past summer. Britain's wind-powered output as a total percentage of installed capacity hit just 11% between February and March of 2021. That amounted to the country's longest spell of low wind in over a decade, reports the FT. And as recently as September 6, wind power provided less than 3% of the UK's total electricity generation, compared with annual averages of 18%. So there's a huge collapse in it. At the same time, just as we mentioned in the previous episode, they have to blame somebody else. So they use it as an excuse to hype up the war and tensions with Russia and other oil producers, saying it's their fault. Not that we invested all of this money into this wind power and the wind power has failed. It's like you could see it in the actual data, the cause of the electricity price situation in the United Kingdom at the moment.
All right, it's the joke about the kid. He kills his parents. He goes in front of the judge, and the judge says, "How do you plead?" He says, "Innocent. Please be lenient with me because I am now an orphan." Right? So there's Great Britain. They killed the economy. They killed their wind generation capacity. They are stupid, and they want the world to bail them out again. We already bailed them out like 3 or 4 times in the last 20 years. I'm not bailing out Great Britain again.
Well, that is just a situation. We've reported it, we're looking at it, and I'm sorry it's the Daily Mail. People complain about that, but the Daily Mail is the only one not behind a paywall. We could go to Reuters, we can go to Financial Times, but they're all behind paywalls. So we're covering it using the Daily Mail.
I don't doubt that's the case. It's easily quantifiable. They did something stupid. But when was the last time they did something smart?
Exactly, but there's entropy and rot and decay, as we've covered over the last year, especially in the institutions, in the elite, in the thinking class, the people who are supposed to have the answers. And I'm saying there's no more wind in their sail, not only economically and financially, but culturally and societal-wise. So you either step off, and that's what I'm leading up to telling you, that This episode is our last episode right here this year in 2021 in North Carolina. We're going to head south because that energy crisis of these leaders in a sailboat with no wind, and they're stuck out there. So either we stay here and we freeze over Christmas, or we head south to Florida, to Mexico, and then to El Salvador. We're going to chase, that's putting wind in our sails. We're going to be like, we're getting out of here. We're not going to sit in the bottom of this freezing boat waiting for some answers.
We are answering the clarion call of Satoshi. We go where Satoshi calls us. He's calling us to El Salvador to continue the work. He called us in 2011 when Bitcoin was $1 and said, we want you, Max and Stacy, to spread the gospel of Bitcoin to the world. We did that. We created millions of Bitcoin millionaires. And now we are on a new mission from Satoshi. It's taking us south to the equator. And I only do what Satoshi tells me to do.
Well, we're heading south. We're actually going to make a special program. We'll be making special programs for RC and Espanol. We're going to be trying to learn Spanish while taking these 6-part series that we're going to do in Mexico, in El Salvador. We're going to be, chronicling our adventures of not only escaping the energy crisis, but also putting as I keep on saying, the wind in our sails, because we don't want the global stilling. This show does not stay still. We keep moving forward. We progress. And if we have to sacrifice,
Look, the problem is when you tell people in Britain that there's a global still problem, they think that you're referring to the whiskey still, that you're referring to alcohol. And if it was a problem in Britain of you were cutting off the alcohol supply, they would do something. But it's not that, so they won't do anything.
But Max, it reads, where has the wind gone?
Well, yeah, I hear you. That's like Gone with the Wind, isn't it?
Or they could be referring to the fact that Joe Biden has left the country. He was there recently, blowing wind, letting rip wind. It made headlines.
I knew at the beginning that this was going to head toward a flatulence joke. I knew that the second you read the headline 5-6 minutes ago, this was all one big buildup to a Joe Biden flatulence joke. So I didn't want to get in the way of that joke. So I thought, you know what? I'll just let this joke develop. It's going to take a long, long time, and the payoff won't be all that funny. However, let's go with it.
Well, I think we've hit a bit of global stilling in this episode. So we're going to turn to the second half, whereby we will be joined by Michael Hudson. There's no hot air there.
No, he's pure signal. I'm excited. Don't go away. Much more coming your way. Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to return to our conversation with Dr. Michael Hudson. He's out with his third edition of Super Imperialism. It's a book that is a classic. It's being reread again as we see kind of the American U.S. dollar hegemony empire die. I mean, what you predicted would happen, Dr. Michael Hudson, I believe the book came out in the 1970s. What you said was in place and laying out the roadmap to imperial decline in the U.S. dollar hegemony is now seemingly playing out in the year 2021 and 2022 and in the next year or so. Is that the case?
Yes, it's the case. Now that other countries have understood how the dollar standard works, they don't want to be a part of it. My book, Super Imperialism, is sold best in China. I think the first edition was 60,000 copies right away, and some bookstores, single bookstores, have sold 1,000 copies. So this became a guide to China. I was invited over to meet with numerous party officials there. And they decided, well, gee, if America can simply print dollars and buy up our industry and buy our exports just for creating them electronically, we don't want to be a part of that system. And if the dollar spending is what's surrounding us with military bases, the last thing we want is to recycle our savings and our foreign exchange reserves into U.S. dollars, because that'll simply strengthen America's new Cold War. So the decision is they want to de-dollarize, and by de-dollarizing, this was the source of America's free ride really since the 1970s, since we went off gold in 1971.
Right. So the shock troops that work on behalf of the U.S. dollar empire work at the IMF and the World Bank, seemingly. And they're the point people that go out there. You know, John Perkins wrote a great book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman, talking about how the U.S. indebts countries, particularly in Central America, in ways that are impossible to pay back. And it's, when they don't pay back, they ask for assets and other things in return. Effectively, that's the empire. It's an empire of debt, and they threaten violence. The CIA is also an instrument of monetary extremism or monetary violence. I would say it's the primary purpose of the CIA would be to enforce the dollar, which, as Paul Krugman of the New York Times points out, is backed by men with guns, end quote. Is that true?
It is true, because if the key to American control over the rest of the world is financial, is establishing a banking and financial system control, then anything that threatens this is going to end America's ability to control other countries. So yes, the CIA's job is to promote what is America's means of financial leverage, as we're seeing now over Argentina, which is now running into trouble again. And the pro-U.S. Argentinian government looked like it was going to lose the election. The IMF lent an enormous amount of new money to Argentina so that all of the wealthy Argentinians and the American companies there could move their money out of Argentine currency into the dollar. And then after the left wing took over, the IMF let Argentina drop, and foreign speculators moved against Argentina. And so the United States can say, you know, whether your country has an oligarchy or a democracy, if you have a democracy, we're going to crush you. If you, we support oligarchy. We said, and that essentially, I think, is Biden is having the summit next week between democracy and authoritarians. He said, look, America's backing autocracy. We're the autocracy. Our enemy are democratic countries that actually follow what voters do, like Syria, Libya, Afghanistan, China, Russia. So you're having the whole fight against democracy being coordinated monetarily by the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, and militarily by the CIA and the Defense Department.
It seems like this fight against democracy, as you describe it, using U.S. dollar as a weapon, as we run out of countries to exploit, these policymakers are looking inward. And so America is now being eaten out from within. Is that a fair characteristic?
That's exactly what's happening. This is what happened in Rome. When you can't exploit other countries anymore, you turn within, and the class war is back in business here. And you're having a very rapid polarization of the economy and hence of American politics.
All right, now, when you wrote Super Imperialism back in the 70s, and it's got a third edition coming out, and everyone's embracing it, looking at it again, because it's such a brilliant book, you were at the time kind of transitioning out of your role as a credit analyst at Chase Manhattan Bank, you know, is how you kind of made your bones initially as an analyst. I got to ask you to put your credit analyst hat on for a second. What's going on in Turkey? The currency's in free fall. Erdogan is lowering interest rates. Is that what you would recommend him to do? What should he be doing?
Well, he's basically committed a financial suicide in Turkey. Turkish banks have, for the last 2 years, have let customers choose whether they want to keep their deposits in lira or US dollars. And so more and more Turkish citizens, many friends of mine in Turkey, have said, we want to hold our money in US dollars. So there's been a huge flight out of Turkey. If you're going to lower interest rates to try to spur capital investment, you have to have capital controls. And instead of having capital controls, Erdogan has said, anybody who wants to make a killing, who wants to make a free ride, all they have to do is go to their local bank and say, can you please turn my lira into dollars? So this throws yet more lira onto the foreign exchange market, and it's in free fall, and it's going down and down and down And somehow the Erdogan believes that this is going to make Turkey more competitive. And what it does is the lira goes down, you're in a Weimar-type hyperinflation situation where the lower the currency goes, the higher the price of imports is. Turkey has to import its oil, its fuel, it's minerals, it's iron, it's products, and all of a sudden, all of the debts that Turkey's run up in dollars have to be paid with more and more domestic lira. And where is Turkey going to get them? It doesn't exist. So the Turkish debt basically cannot be paid. And as long as Erdogan lets the banks convert domestic lira into dollars or other foreign currency, the market is going to plunge and plunge and plunge. He doesn't have any idea about how banks work, which is why he's fired the last three central bank managers.
Right, but as you describe it, that sets up a huge demand for dollars, and America, to keep its own banks solvent, can't let those dollars go into default, and that drives the huge money printing by the Fed. And that now is turning into inflation in the United States, right?
Well, America is not going to suffer from Turkey's problem. The American banks and the European banks have self-contained Turkish banks. So the foreign Turkish banks owned by the U.S. and European head offices may go under, but it's not going to threaten the United States at all. Turkey doesn't really matter. What does matter to the United States is Turkey being lost to NATO altogether, and Turkey just becoming a politically unpredictable country that may move much closer to Russia or China if they choose to help bail it out.
But doesn't this fall under the category of the, quote, Triffin dilemma?
Explain how that is. I don't really
As
see
I
it.
just described it, we are the global reserve currency. We've got to print dollars to keep the empire going. And when these things start to fall apart, we end up having to finance the entire globe, which has a blowback, essentially, by undermining our own economy. It seems like part of the...
I think
Go ahead.
the whole world, the whole term Triffin dilemma, I think, is a misnomer. He thought the dilemma was the U.S. running a deficit by having the dollar the world currency and having other countries hold their treasury IOUs. Well, the real dilemma is going off the Triffin dilemma. The real dilemma is where you end foreign countries holding the U.S. currency. That's the real dilemma, because you cut off America's ability to get a free lunch and buy up foreign industry for nothing, and to bankrupt other countries that need dollars in order to pay their foreign debt or buy American grain or whatever.
All right, fair enough. I stand corrected. Let's talk about super imperialism. Where can people get a copy of it now? It's in its third edition. It's coming out. It's super popular, even in the Bitcoin community. Why should people be reading this now?
Well, because toward the end, I give the last few chapters are on de-dollarization. And the question is, what are countries going to do if they don't hold dollars? Are they going to hold gold? Some countries are holding Bitcoin, as we've discussed before. So if you're trying to figure out this massive central bank savings, what is it going to be invested in? Well, anyone who buys Bitcoin is probably going to think of other alternatives to the dollar too. So this explains how the world foreign exchange market works, and essentially how you can understand what's happening, and if you want, make money off it.
Right. So continuing on with this dollars and printing of dollars, we've got a massive money pump going on. U.S. dollars are being pumped liberally into the economies, as you've just described it. And U.S. consumers, to some extent, are benefiting because they're out there spending on a lot of stuff. But it seems like a precursor toward something on the other end of this that's very unpleasant. Can you walk us through that?
Well, what's unpleasant is the amount of debt that has been going up. People are spending money on housing, which has gone up by about 20% in the last year. They're spending money on mortgages. They're spending money on that they've bought. And a lot of these debts, especially in New York State where I live, if you owe a mortgage debt, or if you haven't been able to pay your rent because you've been off, there's been a moratorium on debt service and foreclosures that expires in February. And everybody is thinking here in February, there are going to be tens of thousands of New Yorkers evicted, out on the street, losing their homes. Crime rates are going to go up. So it's the debt bomb that people are expecting to explode domestically, just as it exploded in Argentina and other debtor countries.
All right, so we have about 20 seconds left. Debt bomb sounds very poetic. I suppose, what's the timing on this? It looks like it's happening. I got a feeling of it. We're talking the next 12 months.
Oh, well, February is when it's scheduled for. February is when all the moratorium expire.
Okay,
So
fair enough. February debt bomb. Thank you, Dr. Michael Hudson. The book is Super Imperialism, now in its 3rd edition. Pick it up. It's a classic. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me on, Max.
All righty, and that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacy Herbert. I want to thank our guest, Dr. Michael Hudson. The book is Super Imperialism. Until next time, bye, y'all.